U.S. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy will be in the hot seat again on Monday. This time, he's scheduled to testify to the House about proposed changes at his agency. The emergency hearing will also look at recent delays in mail delivery. DeJoy is a major donor to the Trump campaign. Lawmakers accuse him of sabotaging the Postal Service to help the president get reelected. During testimony before a Senate committee on Friday, DeJoy defended the much-criticized changes. He said that they will not hamper mail-in ballots for the upcoming election, and mail ballots would be securely treated as first-class mail. For more on this, I'm joined by Congresswoman Cheri Bustos of Illinois. Congresswoman, it's great to have you. What do you want to hear from DeJoy when he goes before Congress on Monday?
Well, I want to hear him say he acknowledges that his bosses are the American people, the 330 million Americans who receive mail Monday through Saturday for many, many, many years now, and that he seems to not understand who he's there to serve. You know, this undermining the U.S. Postal Service, and I emphasize the word service because it's not the U.S. Postal business. You know, he is there to oversee the Postal Service that has been around for a couple hundred years now. And, you know, first and foremost, we want to make sure that mail gets to all of the veterans out there. About 80% to 90% of the prescriptions they get come through the U.S. Postal Service. And same thing with senior citizens who, those who get recurring prescriptions get about 75% of their prescriptions through the U.S. Postal Service. So it's those kind of stories and the people behind those stories that need to make sure that they have a reliable postal service, not one that is being sabotaged by the U.S. Postal General.
Now, normally you would be in the Quad Cities at home on a Saturday in August, but you returned to Washington today to vote on a bill that would provide $25 billion in funding to the Postal Service. Does that bill have any chance, though, in the Senate?
Well, you know, for the life of me, it's like, how did something like this become political? We will pass this. In fact, I just passed a couple of votes that lead into this main vote. I'll be going back over to the House floor in just a little bit. But for the life of me, why has something as simple, and I do mean simple, is making sure that we are funding the U.S. Postal Service at a time that we are living through a worldwide pandemic, at a time where you have seniors and veterans requiring literally a matter of life or death that they get their prescriptions delivered to them through the Postal Service. And we're going into an election cycle that for the first time in our history that will rely so much on absentee voting and vote by mail. So there's absolutely no reason that this should have become political. But yet with the Trump administration, yet again, something that should not be political has become political.
I think there are a lot of people who are scratching their heads on how the Postal Service became this political football. Well, Postmaster General DeJoy agreed to halt any new changes to the Postal Service until after Election Day following this public outcry. So why aren't Democrats satisfied with that promise?
Well, it's not nearly good enough. What we're asking in this bill that I'm about ready to vote on is that we go back to where things were. All we're saying is go back to where things were in January of this year. Before the dismantling of the sorting machines began, with a path to dismantle about 600 of these machines that sort anywhere between 35,000 and 100,000 pieces of mail every hour. He's been dismantling those, and so in the time that he's saying he'll just halt that, it doesn't account for what he's already dismantled. The little blue corner blue boxes that, you know, I can remember back from when I was a little girl and how my mom would mail our $150 a month mortgage payment through there. You know, so all of that, it's not enough to say I'm going to halt this. We're saying go back to where things were before. Make sure that those sorting machines are fully operational, and make sure that those blue boxes that we're so used to seeing on the corner, that they go back to where they were before.
Well, the president has made it very clear that he's opposed to broad-based mail-in voting. You're the chairwoman of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Does your party believe that universal mail-in voting could help you expand your majority in the House in 2020?
Again, I'm actually, even though I'm responsible for the political arm of House Democrats, I'm going to take the politics out of that question as well. You know, this is the fundamental foundation of our democracy is to allow people to vote. We just celebrated the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote. I'm wearing my suffragette white today. But, so it is a matter of why. I think the question is this: why would anybody want to constrict access to the ballot box at a time where we are entering a presidential election? It only happens once every 4 years. Why would anybody want to restrict the access to the ballot box? What I'm saying is that if we should make voting as easy as possible, and we should not be throwing up barricades. You mentioned that I chair the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. We are in the middle of having to invest more than $10 million, along with our sister committee on the Senate side, in state parties, in lawsuits all over this country, where there has been a crusade on the part of the Trump administration to get in the way of people's voting rights. And so we've had to invest more than $10 million in removing those barriers. This is just another barrier that the Trump administration has thrown up to undermine the confidence that people have in our voting process. And it's unconscionable that the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, is getting in the way of our democracy yet again.
All right, so then let's go ahead and formally switch gears to the political and to your role as chairwoman. A recent CBS News poll shows that Biden supporters are less enthusiastic about voting than Trump supporters. Are you worried about how that could impact down-ballot races? And how do you think that the addition of Senator Kamala Harris is affecting enthusiasm?
Well, I think if anybody wants to question the enthusiasm, just take a look at the convention. And, obviously we had more than 100 million people tune in and watch one way or another, whether it was through television or online, but engage in that national convention. I don't look, I can speak for myself. There wasn't a day in the last 4 days of that convention where I didn't walk away being pretty darn excited. Now, obviously, I'm a Democrat in elected office, so that's probably a little more natural for me to feel that level of excitement. But as far as the down ballot, look, we began working on this election cycle as early as January of 2019. And that means investing in some of the toughest districts in the country. We are now playing into deep Republican territory where we have a cash-on-hand advantage, meaning our candidates will have the resources to tell voters who they are, what they're about, what they stand for, to clearly point out that contrast between who they are and who their opponent is. We have the right candidates. We have doctors. We have people who have served tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have educators, farmers. We have experts in foreign policy, all of that. We have the right people running. We will have the resources. And we have built from scratch in the middle of a pandemic something we call the Virtual Action Center, where we have had hundreds of thousands of people engage in these campaigns all over the country through the comfort of their living rooms, because we have to do so much of this virtually now. So we've laid all that groundwork to be ready for November 3rd of 2020, and making sure that we are encouraging, and I'll take this opportunity to encourage people to vote early when you can. And I think that will be very important when we actually do have this tremendous enthusiasm for this election cycle, and making sure we do everything we can to show people that we are working for the people, not for special interests, not for big business, but for the people.
Congresswoman, before I let you go, I wanted to express my sympathies to your constituents and all of the people in the Midwest who are still suffering from the effects of that terrible derecho. Do you think that the suffering, that the effects of that storm has received enough political and media attention?
I think it's another example of why it is so important to show Americans that the Midwest matters. There's so much out there that talks about the coasts, and the major media centers are in Washington D.C. and New York, and LA gets a lot of attention, but here in the heartland, and I'm talking to you from Washington D.C. right now, but I just got here late last night. I've been a Midwesterner my entire life. I've lived in Illinois my entire life. And I think we're critical to the electoral process, but we are also, the everyday working people. I have a son who showers after work. He's a welder. I have another son who works for an ag implement company, family-owned company, and I have another son who's an engineer. So that that's kind of the story of the Midwest, you know, from blue collar to white collar, all within one family. I come from a long line of family farmers myself. You know, we want to make sure that we're not left behind. I do want to compliment Abby Finkenauer, a freshman member of Congress from Iowa, and Cindy Axney, another freshman member of Congress from out of the Des Moines area. They have been working around the clock, listening to the family farmers who have been devastated by this, but not just listening, telling their stories. If you take a look at what they've said about the derecho and this terrible harm that it's done to crops all over Iowa, and then of course in Illinois as well, they've been fighting for their people. And I can tell you, they faced a deaf ear when they asked the administration to come in, when they asked their governor Kim Reynolds, who was very slow to react to this. But I compliment Cindy Axney and Abby Finkenauer for their tremendous response to this right immediately after the storm subsided.
Well, we hope everyone gets the assistance that they need. Congresswoman Cheri Bustos, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.